The desert sun rose slowly over the wide lands of the Arizona Territory, shaping long shadows across the rocks and tall grass. Every morning, the land seemed to wake before the people did, and on this day, a young Apache woman named Nalin stood at the edge of her camp, watching the first rays of light. She always loved this quiet hour. The wind was soft, the sky was clear, and everything felt calm and open, as if the world had decided to start fresh. Nalin was known among her people for having a gentle nature and a curious heart. While others focused on daily tasks, gathering food, preparing hides, checking horses, Nalin always had questions about the world beyond their home. She asked about clouds, stars, birds, plants, and places she had never seen. Her elders often laughed softly and told her she was born with eyes that wanted to explore. Recently, something new had caught her attention. The small group of white settlers who had built a trading post not far from her people's land. At first, the Apache camp watched the newcomers from a distance. No one knew if they were friendly or if they would bring trouble. The older warriors said it was better to stay away, and for many months, that is exactly what everyone did. But Nalin, with her endless curiosity, could not help noticing the strange new things the settlers brought with them: bright clothes, metal tools, thick wagons, and animals she had never seen up close. When she asked the elders about the settlers, they would answer only with caution. They reminded her that outsiders did not always understand their ways, and that misunderstandings could cause problems even when no one wished for them. Still, they did not forbid her from observing the trading post from afar, as long as she stayed careful and respectful. And so she watched. She stayed behind a group of tall mesquite trees and studied the busy activity of the trading post. She watched how the settlers moved, how they spoke, how they shared work with one another. She saw women wearing dresses made from thick cloth that seemed too heavy for desert heat. She saw men using tools that looked sharp but useful. She watched children who ran around laughing, chasing each other as if no worry existed in the world. The more she observed them, the more questions she had. Some of their actions seemed simple, but others were confusing. Why did they build their homes in the same shape? Why did they wear so many layers of clothing? Why were they always carrying paper in their hands? To Nalin, it all seemed like a new language made of actions instead of words. Her interest grew when she noticed families, mothers, fathers, and children who looked very different from her own people. The Apache families lived in warm, open homes, with plenty of space to gather, share, and rest. They kept strong connections to each other, with elders advising younger ones, and children learning from all adults around them. But the settlers behaved differently. They often kept their families small and private, closing doors behind them and speaking quietly inside. Nalin wondered how they raised their children. She wondered what games their children played, what stories they told, and how they taught their young ones to grow strong. And sometimes, when she saw a new baby in a settler's arms, she wondered what beliefs the settlers held about bringing children into the world. Her people welcomed children with joy, prayers, and careful traditions passed down for generations. Everything was connected: family, land, ancestors, and nature. But the settlers seemed to have different ways that she did not yet understand. She did not judge them. She simply wanted to learn. One warm afternoon, Nalin crouched behind a tall cactus as she again watched the trading post. A group of settler women stood outside a wooden building, laughing together. One of them held a baby wrapped in soft cloth. The baby's skin was pale, almost glowing in the bright sun. Nalin listened as the women talked, but their English words were hard for her to follow. She only understood a few expressions, and most were unfamiliar. Still, she kept watching, trying to make sense of their gestures and smiles. Just then, a small wagon rolled toward the group, pulled by a horse that looked tired from the long road. The man steering the wagon was someone Nalin had seen before, a tall, quiet doctor named Elias Turner. He often visited nearby camps, offering help for small injuries or illnesses. He did not speak Apache well, but he always tried to show kindness through his actions. The elders respected him enough to allow him to help when needed. Elias greeted the women, who stepped aside so he could check on the baby. Nalin saw him gently touch the infant's forehead, then speak calmly to the mother. The mother nodded with relief. Nalin tilted her head curiously. She had seen Apache midwives care for babies, but she had never seen a white doctor do the same. His tools, his gestures, and his way of speaking seemed strange yet interesting. She watched as he took out a small leather bag filled with items she had never seen before. It was at this moment that Nalin realized something. She did not really understand how the settlers viewed children, families, or the ways of bringing life into their world. Her people had traditions, songs, and ceremonies. The settlers had something else, something she wanted to understand. Later that day, she returned to her camp, carrying firewood, but her thoughts were far away. As she walked through the village, she noticed children playing near the river and mothers preparing food. Everything felt familiar, comforting, and full of meaning. Yet she could not stop thinking about the differences she had seen. After sharing the firewood, she sat beside her grandmother, a wise woman with a calm voice. Her grandmother noticed her thoughtful expression and asked softly what was on her mind. Nalin hesitated. She did not want to seem foolish, but her curiosity was too strong to ignore. So she explained everything she had observed: the settlers' clothing, their tools, their homes, and the baby she had seen in the doctor's arms. Her grandmother listened patiently, smiling gently as Nalin spoke. When Nalin finally admitted that she did not understand how the settlers raised children, her grandmother laughed kindly, not to mock her, but because she recognized the spark of curiosity that had always lived within Nalin's heart. She reminded Nalin that people from different lands often have different customs. What seems unusual at first may simply be another way of living. She encouraged her granddaughter to learn, but also to stay cautious and respectful. Understanding grows slowly, she said. The desert teaches us that. You cannot rush the sunrise. Son. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Nalin lay awake, staring at the glowing constellations. She wondered about all the people living beyond the Apache lands, how they built their families, how they believed in their futures, how they welcomed new life. She wondered if the settlers kept secrets, or if everything could be explained if someone simply asked the right question. She did not know that her innocent curiosity would soon lead her into an unexpected conversation, one that would cause confusion, laughter, and surprising lessons for both her people and the settlers. But for now, as the night grew quiet around her, Nalin only felt a deep, warm curiosity like a light glowing in her chest, waiting for the right moment to shine into the world. The next morning, the desert air felt cooler than usual, carrying a gentle breeze that brushed against the tall grasses. Nalin walked along a quiet trail near her camp, thinking again about the settlers and the doctor she had watched the day before. Her mind was full of questions, some small and some big, all swirling together like dust in the wind. She hoped that someday she might understand the things she had seen, especially the way the doctor cared for the newborn child. As she walked, she collected herbs for her community's healers. Plants used to make calming teas, soothing pastes, and simple medicines. She knew the desert's gifts well. Every leaf, root, and flower had a purpose. She moved carefully and respectfully, thanking the earth in her heart for every plant she took. The morning remained peaceful, and she enjoyed the stillness. But the peace did not last long. A sudden sound broke the quiet, a sharp thud, followed by a startled cry from an animal. Nalin froze for a moment, trying to understand what she had heard. Then she heard it again, along with a man's voice calling out for help. The voice was shaky, confused, and clearly in need. She followed the sound and soon reached a small clearing where she saw the doctor, Elias Turner. His horse had slipped on a loose patch of dirt while stepping down from a slope. The animal had regained its balance, but Elias himself had fallen to the ground. He was now sitting upright, holding his ankle with a tight expression of discomfort. When he noticed Nalin, he looked relieved. He knew her not well, but well enough to recognize her face. He had seen her before when he visited her camp to deliver basic supplies or to offer small help. She had always stayed quiet around him, watching from the side. He never guessed that she was studying him with curiosity. Seeing that he was hurt, Nalin stepped forward with calm confidence. She did not rush. Instead, she approached him slowly, so he would not feel startled. When she reached him, she crouched down to examine his ankle. She could see swelling already forming, but it did not look serious enough to panic. Elias tried speaking in his limited Apache, but his words came out awkwardly. He wanted to say he was fine, that it was only a small injury, but his attempt sounded more like a jumble of mismatched words. Nalin understood only part of it. She responded in simple English, her voice gentle and clear. "You fell," she said softly. "Your ankle is hurt. It needs rest." Elias nodded, grateful that she could understand him. Yes, I slipped," he replied with a strained smile. "Just a twist. I think nothing is broken." Nalin helped him move to a nearby rock so he could sit more comfortably. His horse stood close by, calm again but clearly confused about what had happened. She gently placed her hand on the animal's neck, whispering a few soft Apache words that comforted the horse even though it didn't know the language. Then she returned to Elias. He watched her with sincere appreciation. Many settlers saw the Apache as distant people, but Elias never believed that. He always felt that kindness could build bridges where fear once stood. And here was proof this young woman helping him without hesitation. Nalin reached into her small pouch and took out herbs she had collected earlier. She gently crushed a few leaves between her fingers, releasing a fresh, calming scent. She mixed them with a bit of water from her canteen and created a simple paste. With careful hands, she applied the mixture to Elias's ankle. He winced. At first the herbs were cool and slightly tingling, but after a few moments, he sighed with relief. "That helps," he said gratefully. Nalin nodded. "You must not walk too much. The swelling will grow." Elias laughed softly. "Yes, I believe you are right." For a moment, they simply sat in comfortable silence. The sun warmed the earth around them, and the breeze carried the scent of desert flowers. Then Elias tried again to speak, wanting to thank her properly. "You, very kind," he said slowly, choosing his words with care. "You help me when I am foolish with this horse." Nalin smiled at the small joke. She appreciated that he tried to speak respectfully, even when his words came out uneven. His effort made her feel more comfortable around him. She began asking questions, small ones at first, simple enough to bridge their language gap. She asked about the metal tools she sometimes saw in his bag. He answered with gestures, showing their purpose. She asked why he carried so many papers in his pockets. Elias explained that the papers helped him keep track of medicines, notes, and simple drawings for his work. But then he tried explaining something deeper, his role as a doctor for the settlers. He spoke about helping mothers during childbirth, ensuring babies were born safely, and using his training to guide families through moments of difficulty. His English was clear, but whenever he used unfamiliar medical words, Nalin grew confused. She listened with focus, her eyes wide with interest, but she did not fully understand everything he tried to say. Elias could tell she was trying hard, so he slowed down even more. He relied on gestures, simple terms, and drawings he made in the dirt with a stick. But even then, some parts were unclear to her. The idea of a man assisting with childbirth was unusual in her culture, and the tools he carried for this purpose were unlike anything she had seen. At one point, he made a gesture to explain a baby entering the world, and Nalin's eyes widened in surprise. She had never seen white people's birthing traditions, and his explanation, mixed with odd hand motions and unfamiliar vocabulary, made her believe he was describing a very different process from what her people practiced. She began to think that white settlers perhaps had their own way, their own steps, and their own special methods for bringing children into the world. Methods that sounded almost mysterious when explained so poorly. Elias continued talking, unaware of the confusion building in her mind. He thought he was making himself clearer. He believed she understood. But Nalan's imagination filled the spaces his words did not, shaping a picture that was far from accurate. Still, she remained calm and thoughtful, absorbing everything she could. She admired his gentleness and the sincerity in his voice. She could tell he truly cared for the people he treated, just as her community's healers cared for their own. When his ankle felt stable enough to stand, Nalin helped him rise slowly. He tested his weight on the injured foot and nodded, relieved that the pain had lessened. He thanked her again, his voice warm and appreciative. "You helped me more than you know," he said. Nalin bowed her head slightly, showing respect, then stepped back so he could lead his horse. As he prepared to leave, he said, "If you or your people ever need help, you can call for me. Taff, 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 taff." She nodded, though she knew her community was often careful about seeking outside help. Still, she appreciated the offer. Before he mounted his horse, he smiled one last time at her. She watched him ride away slowly, careful not to strain his injured ankle. After he disappeared over the hill, Nalin stood alone in the clearing, thinking deeply. The doctor's explanations echoed in her mind, confusing, yet fascinating. She wondered whether she should share them with her grandmother or keep them to herself until she understood better. But one thing was certain. She now believed that white settlers had unique ways of bringing children into their families, and she wanted to learn more. Her innocent misunderstanding would soon set the stage for a surprising moment. One that no one, not even she, could predict. The day after Nalin helped the doctor, she returned to her camp with a thoughtful expression that did not leave her face for many hours. She went about her tasks as usual, carrying water, preparing food, helping the children, but her mind stayed busy. She kept replaying the doctor's words, the strange drawings he made in the dirt, and the unusual gestures he used while talking about how white settlers welcomed new children into their families. She understood some parts, but other parts did not make sense. His explanations had been interesting, but also confusing. He spoke slowly, but the meaning still slipped away at times, like water running through open fingers. She could not ask many questions then, because she worried her English was not strong enough to express her thoughts clearly. By evening, her curiosity had grown even greater. Later, when families gathered around cooking fires, Nalin sat beside her grandmother again. Her grandmother noticed the way she stared at the flames with a faraway look. It did not take long before the older woman smiled knowingly and said, "Your thoughts are speaking so loudly I can almost hear them." Nalin hesitated but finally shared what she had learned or thought she had learned from the doctor. She explained his hand movements, the drawings he made, and the words he used that she did not fully understand. As she spoke, she tried to repeat his gestures, though they looked just as confusing as when Elias had made them. Her grandmother listened patiently. Near the end of Nalin's explanation, she gave a soft chuckle, but it was not a laugh of mockery. It was a warm, gentle laugh that elders often give when young people stumble into innocent misunderstandings. "My child," she said kindly, "people from different places sometimes describe things in strange ways. You must not believe every detail when you do not know the whole picture." But Nalin was not convinced. He spoke very carefully, she insisted. It felt important. And he used tools in his explanation. Maybe white settlers have special ways for bringing children into their families. Ways we do not know. A few other women sitting nearby heard part of the conversation. They leaned closer, curious. When Nalin repeated what she believed the doctor had told her, the women shared surprised glances, then covered their mouths to hide small laughs. They were not laughing at her, they simply found the misunderstanding amusing. One woman said gently, "Perhaps the doctor was trying to tell you something simple, and you understood it in a different way." Another woman added, "Sometimes things sound strange when we translate them. Maybe nothing is unusual at all." Nalin listened but remained unsure. The uncertainty pushed her curiosity even further. She did not want to appear foolish. She simply wanted clarity. She wondered if she should return to the trading post and ask again, this time more directly. As days passed, her mind continued to return to the same thought. She imagined the settlers having unique customs, maybe involving tools or certain steps when welcoming new babies. She pictured them preparing special rooms, using unusual objects, and following methods that were completely different from her people's traditions. Every time she saw a settler child from afar, the questions only grew stronger. One afternoon, while helping gather wood, Nalin overheard two older boys telling a funny version of her story. They exaggerated every detail, lifting their hands dramatically, imitating her confused expressions, and pretending they were white settlers performing strange rituals. The children nearby laughed, enjoying the playful storytelling. Nalin felt embarrassed at first. Her cheeks warmed, and she looked down at the ground. But she soon realized they meant no harm. In their culture, gentle teasing was common. Sometimes stories became humorous, not to insult, but to entertain. She joined in the laughter, even if she still felt a little shy. Still, she did not forget her original question. Later that week, Nalin made a small but brave decision. She told her grandmother that she wished to visit the trading post again, this time not to watch from afar, but to speak. Her grandmother looked at her with a calm expression and asked, "What will you say, child?" Nalin took a breath and answered simply, "I want to understand the truth. If I ask the doctor again, perhaps he can explain in a clearer way." Her grandmother considered this for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You may go, but remember to speak kindly and listen carefully." The next morning, Nalin set out early while the air was still cool. She walked past the tall cactus plants and the rocky ridges she knew by heart. As she approached the trading post, sounds of morning activity drifted toward her, horses moving, tools clinking, and settlers calling to one another. Her heart beat a little faster. This time, she was not hiding in the trees. She was stepping right into their world. When she reached the open yard near the main building, a few settlers turned to look at her. Some paused their tasks, curious. They knew the Apache usually stayed distant. The sight of a young Apache woman walking so confidently among them was unexpected. Nalin stood tall. She greeted them respectfully with a small nod. One of the settler women, Mrs. Harper, recognized her from previous visits. She always tried to show friendliness. "Hello there," she said warmly. "Are you looking for something today?" Nalin searched for the right English words. "Dr. Elias," she replied slowly. "I want to speak to him." Mrs. Harper pointed toward a smaller building nearby. "He is inside. You may see him." Nalin thanked her and walked toward the building. Her steps were steady, though inside, she felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. When she reached the doorway, she saw Elias preparing a small table with medical supplies. He looked up, surprised but happy to see her. "Nalin," he said gently, "your visit is unexpected. Is everything all right?" She bowed her head slightly. "I have a question," she said calmly. "A question about children." Elias blinked in confusion. "Children?" he repeated. "Yes," she said, trying not to sound uncertain. "The last time, you told me something about how white people make children. I do not understand everything." She spoke with honesty and innocence, believing she was saying something completely normal. But whether because of her exact wording, her serious expression, or the quiet room they were standing in, the settlers within earshot paused and stared. A few exchanged startled glances. One man coughed awkwardly. A woman standing near the entrance covered her mouth in shock, unsure if she heard correctly. To them, her innocent question sounded much different than she intended. Elias felt the air shift with sudden tension. His eyes widened, and his cheeks warmed. He understood instantly that a misunderstanding had occurred, and that others were misinterpreting her words even more strongly. He raised his hands gently and said with a calm voice, "Nalin, wait. I think you misunderstood my words before, and perhaps the way you ask now may confuse others." Nalin frowned slightly, not in anger but in pure confusion. She had no idea why everyone reacted so strangely. She had only wanted clarity. Elias guided her a few steps outside the room, away from curious ears. He kept his tone calm, trying not to make her feel embarrassed. "Let us talk where it is quiet," he said softly. Nalin agreed, but she still did not understand what was causing such a reaction. To her, she had simply asked a direct, honest question about something important. She could not yet know that the misunderstanding would soon be cleared, and that both sides would learn something new about patience, communication, and the gentle power of curiosity. When Elias guided Nalin to a quieter place behind the trading post, he walked slowly to avoid hurting his ankle again. The morning sun touched the wooden walls, and the air smelled faintly of dry grass and freshly opened crates. A few settlers nearby pretended to focus on their work, but their ears remained alert, curious about the strange moment they had witnessed. Elias hoped moving away would give them privacy and help clear the confusion. Nalin followed him calmly, though she still didn't understand why everyone had reacted in such a surprising way. She had simply spoken honestly, in the most straightforward way she knew. Asking questions was natural to her, and she never imagined her words could make others uncomfortable. When they reached the quiet spot behind the post, Elias leaned gently against a wall and took a slow breath. He looked at Nalin with kindness, wanting to help her, but also trying to choose his words very carefully. Her expression was open, innocent, and patient. She waited without worry, trusting that he would explain. "Nalin," he began softly, "you asked a question that sounded different to the settlers. Your words, they made them think something else, something you did not mean." "Ma." She tilted her head, puzzled. "I only wanted to understand what you showed me," she said. "You spoke about how white people bring new children. I want to know the truth. I want to learn." Her sincerity touched him deeply. It reminded him of how important clear communication was between their two worlds. Many misunderstandings in the past had grown from simple words spoken the wrong way or ideas explained too quickly. Elias nodded, offering a small smile. "I know, and I want to help you understand. But I think I explained things too fast the other day. My drawings, my words, they were not clear." Nalin felt a small relief. "Then you can explain again," she said gently. "I will listen." He smiled again, appreciating her calm spirit. To him, she was unlike many people he had met, truly open to understanding, without judgment or fear. He admired that. He took a stick from the ground and crouched down, drawing a simple circle in the dirt. "This," he said, "is a home, a house." Nalin nodded. He drew another small shape inside. "This is a baby." She nodded again, following every line of the drawing with careful attention. "In my work," Elias continued, "I help mothers when a baby is ready to enter the world, but I do not create children. I do not decide how families begin." Nalin blinked, slowly understanding that she might have misunderstood something important. Elias continued, using the simplest language he could. He explained that all families, whether Apache or settler, followed the same natural process for welcoming new children into their lives. There were no unusual rituals, no special tools for the beginning of life. The only tools he carried were for helping once a baby was almost ready to be born tools, to keep everyone safe. As he spoke, he used small drawings and gentle gestures, making sure nothing sounded strange or confusing. He explained only the safe parts of childbirth, the parts about care, protection, and health. He avoided anything sensitive, keeping his explanation respectful and thoughtful. Nalin listened closely, and slowly, her expression changed. First, confusion softened into understanding. Then understanding warmed into relief. And finally, a small smile appeared, as if a heavy cloud had lifted from her mind. "So," she said carefully, wanting to be sure, "your work is only to help mothers when the time comes, not to begin the child itself?" "That is correct," Elias said gently. She let out a soft breath and gave a quiet laugh, partly from embarrassment and partly from joy. "Then I truly misunderstood many things," she admitted. "Your drawings looked like steps. Your words made me think you followed a special way to create a child. I thought, maybe white people did something different." Elias laughed kindly, not loudly, not mockingly, but warmly, the way one might laugh when a little confusion finally clears. "No," he said. "Nothing is different. People everywhere share the same beginning. Only the care afterward changes. Because every culture has its own ways." Nalin nodded thoughtfully. She repeated some of his explanation in her own words, making sure she truly understood this time. When they were done, she sat quietly for a moment, letting everything settle in her mind like gentle raindrops, finding the earth. "Thank you," she said at last. "Now I feel lighter. I worried that I had believed something strange." Elias shook his head kindly. "Asking questions is not strange. It is wise. Many people stay silent when they do not understand something. You chose to ask. That is brave." His words warmed her heart. In her community, elders often told her that curiosity was a gift, but it was rare to hear a settler speak in the same way. She appreciated it more than she could express. While they talked, a group of settler women gathered quietly near the corner of a building, watching. They had been worried about the earlier moment, but now they could see the calm faces of both Nalin and Elias. When they saw the two of them smiling, the tension faded. One of the women even smiled gently at Nalin, who returned the gesture. Finally, Elias stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "I hope my words are clear now," he said. "Yes," Nalin replied. "Very clear. I understand everything." She rose to her feet as well. Before she could turn to leave, Elias added, "I am glad you came to ask again. It helped me understand that I must speak more simply when we talk. You helped me too." Nalin felt proud of that. She never imagined she could teach anything to someone like him, a trained doctor who traveled far and studied much. Yet here he was, thanking her. With gentle respect, she bowed her head once more, then took a step back. "Of course," Elias said. "Travel safely." As she began walking home, the morning sun touched her shoulders, warm and steady. The path felt lighter under her feet. She was no longer confused. Instead, she felt peaceful and even a little amused. She imagined telling her grandmother the truth and could already hear her gentle laughter. On her walk, she replayed everything in her mind: the settlers' surprised faces, Elias's careful explanations, the way drawings in the dirt became clear once the right words were added. She felt a shift inside herself, as if a small piece of understanding between their two worlds had finally settled into place. When she reached her camp, several people approached her with curious eyes. They wanted to know what happened. They had heard rumors that she had asked a surprising question at the trading post, and many wondered how the settlers reacted. Nalin sat down with them near the fire and began to explain. But this time, she told the story with a smile on her face and a clear voice. She shared the misunderstanding, the corrections, the drawings, and the gentle kindness of the doctor. She made the story lighthearted, and everyone laughed with her, not at her. but with warm amusement and affection. Her grandmother listened proudly, her eyes shining with gentle understanding. When Nalin finished, her grandmother squeezed her hand and said, "See? Asking questions brings clarity. And sometimes, laughter. Both are good for the heart." For the rest of that day, Nalin walked around with a bright spirit. She felt connected to her community, and also to the settlers in a new way. What began as a confusing and embarrassing moment had turned into something meaningful, a gentle bridge between two cultures. She did not yet know that this small understanding would soon ripple outward, touching more people than she ever expected. But she felt ready for whatever came next. In the days that followed, Nalin felt a new kind of calmness settle inside her, like the soft glow of morning light resting on the desert rocks. The misunderstanding she once carried had become a story of laughter, learning, and gentle connection. Her community now saw her not as someone who made a mistake, but as someone brave enough to seek the truth instead of holding on to confusion. Her grandmother often smiled at her with quiet pride, and children would sometimes giggle and ask her to retell the story of how she went to the trading post and surprised the settlers with her questions. Nalin did not mind their laughter anymore. She knew now that curiosity was nothing to be embarrassed about, especially when it led to understanding. One cool morning, while she was weaving a small basket, a young mother from her camp approached her. The mother held her baby close and asked with a shy laugh, "Nalin, is it true you went to ask the white doctor about children?" Nalin felt her cheeks warm slightly, but she nodded. "Yes," she said with an amused smile. "I wanted to understand his work. I misunderstood many things. But now, everything is clear." The mother laughed softly. "You are brave. I would never be brave enough to ask such questions in front of strangers." Nalin shook her head gently. It was not bravery. It was curiosity, and a mistake that turned into learning. The mother nodded thoughtfully, then added, "Still, many of us learned from your story. We understand the settlers a little better now." That comment stayed with Nalin long after the mother walked away. She realized her small misunderstanding had done something unexpected. It had opened a tiny door between her people and the settlers, allowing both sides to understand each other more. Before long, Nalin noticed small changes around her. When settlers traveled near the camp, some of them smiled more easily, nodding politely. Women from her community sometimes greeted the settlers with friendly gestures instead of cautious silence. Even the children from both groups occasionally exchanged shy waves from a distance. Though the two communities still kept their own space, something lighter now floated in the air. A gentle sense of trust, or at least curiosity, replacing the old feeling of separation. One afternoon, as Nalin was preparing herbs with her grandmother, a messenger from the trading post approached the camp. He was a young settler with kind eyes, carrying a small basket filled with simple items: thread, cloth, dried fruit, and a folded note. He bowed politely to the elders and explained that the trading post wished to send a token of appreciation to the Apache community. They had heard how respectfully Nalin had handled her misunderstanding, and they wanted to show goodwill in return. The elders accepted the gift calmly, but with clear appreciation. Then the young messenger turned to Nalin. "The doctor asked me to greet you," he said gently. "He says thank you for your patience, and he hopes you are well." Nalin felt a warm spark of gratitude. She thanked him in simple English, and he smiled before heading back toward the post. Her grandmother chuckled softly as soon as the messenger left. "It seems your small question has become a bridge," she said. "Even the settlers now think kindly of our camp." Nalin pressed a hand to her heart. "I did not plan for anything like this," she said. "Most bridges are not planned," her grandmother replied. "They start with one person brave enough to speak honestly." Later that week, Nalin decided to visit the trading post again. Not because she was confused this time, but because she wished to thank them for the gift. She walked along the desert path with relaxed steps, feeling no nervousness now. She felt at ease. When she arrived, a few settlers recognized her immediately. Some waved, some smiled. She returned each greeting politely. It amazed her how different things felt from the first time she walked there. Elias was behind the main building, carefully sorting herbs and plants on a wooden table. When he saw her, he looked pleasantly surprised. "Nalin," he said warmly. "It is good to see you again." "Your ankle?" she asked, pointing gently. He tapped his foot with a cheerful laugh. "Better, thanks to your herbs." She smiled. "Yes, and I am grateful," he said. "Did you come because of the basket we sent?" Nalin nodded. "Thank you. My people were glad. It was kind." Elias rested his hands on the table and studied her with a thoughtful expression. "I want you to know," he said slowly, "that your visit the other day taught me something important. When I speak with someone whose language is different from mine, I must slow down and choose simple words. I learned that from you." Nalin's eyes softened with appreciation. "I learned something too," she said. "I learned that I must ask questions when I do not understand something. Silence brings confusion." Elias smiled. "We both learned then." They talked for a few minutes about simple things, weather, herbs, and their communities. Their conversation flowed naturally now, without the tension or confusion of the past. It felt peaceful, like two small streams finally meeting and running side by side. When Nalin returned home, she carried a sense of calm certainty inside her. She knew their two worlds were still different. Different languages, different traditions, different ways of raising families. But she also knew those differences did not have to cause fear or silence. They could create interest, respect, and even friendship. As the weeks passed, the story of Nalin's question became a favorite tale in her camp. Children repeated it loudly, adding funny gestures to make their friends laugh. Adults shared it during quiet evenings, smiling at the gentle misunderstanding that had brought laughter instead of worry. And surprisingly, the story began spreading among settlers as well. Some repeated it in their own way, telling how a brave Apache woman had come to ask an honest question, and how the whole conversation ended with kindness and clarity instead of confusion. Slowly, people from both sides found themselves talking a little more, smiling a little more, and trusting a little more. One warm late afternoon, as the sun began to set and the desert sky turned golden, Nalin sat near the river, watching children from her camp play in the shallow water. Their laughter floated in the breeze, full of lightness and joy. She thought about the past weeks and the unexpected chain of events her curiosity had started. Her grandmother came to sit beside her. For a moment, they watched the children in quiet harmony. "You seem thoughtful," her grandmother said gently. Nalin nodded. "I was thinking how a small misunderstanding can become a good thing. I only wanted to learn. I did not know it would bring people closer." Her grandmother placed a warm hand on her shoulder. "That is how peace begins," she said. "Not always with big speeches or big actions. Sometimes it begins with a simple question, asked with an honest heart." Nalin smiled at those words. They felt true. That night, as she rested beneath a sky full of stars, she felt a deep sense of peace. Peace, born from curiosity, corrected mistakes, gentle laughter, and new understanding. She knew she would carry this lesson forever. That asking questions was a brave step toward connection, and that kindness could turn confusion into harmony. In time, her story became part of the memories of both the Apache camp and the settlers. They would tell it not as a tale of embarrassment, but as a reminder of how two different worlds can meet with patience, respect, and warmth. And in every retelling, people would smile because what began with one innocent question ended with new friendships and a brighter path for everyone.